I represent WETSES, and WETSES is a not-for-profit foundation in which, at this point, 105 companies from all over the world and 22 universities from all over Europe cooperate on the topic of developing new technologies for water treatment. That is, for drinking water production, wastewater treatment, or for the harvesting of energy and minerals from water. And what I'd like to tell you this morning is how we have been able to create a European Center of Excellence, starting from nothing basically, how we have been able to build a regional ecosystem for innovation around that, for valorization and startups, how we have been able to combine private funding with regional, national and European funds in a synergistic way. And I conclude with how we would like to also offer our experience to the rest of Europe in this. So we're active in the field of water technology, and I briefly want to touch that because it's a special field, but of course a lot of societal needs and also with a lot of business opportunities. Lots of industries, it was already explained by Peter de Jong earlier on, have of course relevance with regard to water availability and water scarcity and water quality. What is also very important is that this sector is dominated by private companies for drinking water and sewer water productions who are typically regionally organized, and that the technology, the solution providers are usually SMEs. And there's also a few big multinationals, but the SMEs are the dominant players when it comes to technology development and innovation. So what you basically need is research on several fields on a multidisciplinary level in order to bridge the gap between the societal needs and the business opportunities. And that is where WETSES has stepped in the year of 2003, when we started with 3 universities and 4 companies. And at this point, we work with 22 universities from all over Europe. 55 professors are connected to our 16 million euro program. And 105 companies who determine the research program. These companies are all financially in cash connected to the program. The companies can be connected to one or more of our research teams, and in such a team they share influence on what the PhDs in the project are doing, and they also share the outcome, the intellectual property developed. I will come back to that later on. So we operate basically as a network university. We are a shared laboratory for all these 55 professors because all the research takes place in one location. So this is a very pan-European program, but it is concentrated in one place, so in a region. And in this region, it's not just WETSES. We have organized a campus around it called WaterCampus Leeuwarden. Leeuwarden is a city in the north of the Netherlands where we're based. And WETSES takes care there of the cooperation between companies and universities. We have the Center of Expertise for Water Technology, who takes care for applied research with polytechnical universities and companies. And companies can work on the business development and on export with Water Alliance. And together we can fill basically a total innovation chain where companies can be facilitated in whatever phase of innovation they are, whether it is from market demand through ideas and research to a concept, so from an idea to a concept, or from a concept to something you can sell in applied research or in export. So when we started WETSES in 2003, the idea was immediately to become a European Center of Excellence. But you cannot just start a European Center of Excellence. You have to grow into that. So we started with just a little. And the ambition has always been to combine synergy in European programs for regional and for innovation, for regional development and innovation. We have always wanted to be a European network for companies in order to bring the synergy which is needed in this very diverse sector. And very importantly, we want to be the meeting point for researchers. So the one lab where all those 55 know-how disciplines come together. And then you get, of course, research synergy, but also also synergy in funding. And at this point, we are profiting from several programs, talent programs. Marie Curie, we have a big program, and we're working in several KICs, including the climate KIC, indeed. We have been supported by the European Regional Development Fund from the early beginning. In Interreg projects, we have done a lot. And of course, in Horizon 2020 and in the 7th Framework Program, we have done multiple projects. And this has led basically to synergy in funding from the early beginning, because we have started in 2003 with the blue and the funds from regions. So the region of Northern Netherlands has always paid a little bit themselves, or quite a bit actually. But it was also co-funded by European Regional Development Fund, and companies have been paying from the beginning as well. Companies have always paid at least 25% of our total budget. That's the red part in this graph, where companies and universities are depicted. The Dutch national government has usually paid some 50% of the total budget from several departments. Economical affairs most dominantly. And the blue part up top, that is the European phase that we have been able to add later on. So the European phase for regional, innovation and research. So first we needed to grow into a certain size before we could actually profit from these European innovation funds, but now we do that more and more. And this synergy and funding with a long-term horizon, we have now secured this until 2021 for now, is extremely important. Because there is no one fund that would finance this all by itself. So in the past 13 years, we have learned a lot about how to build a center of excellence, because the truth of the matter is that when we started with WETSES, we had not a real clue how that should be done. But on the way, we found out that there's 5 key elements that you need to incorporate. And the first one is to create trust. Trust between we are a cooperation organization, so there needs to be trust between the companies and the universities involved. So you need to have equal rights for the very important SMEs and the multinationals. And you have to be very clear on IP and publications and so on. I'll come back to all these points later on. Long-term public and private commitment, because we work with PhD programs, and a project of 2 years is not enough, so it needs to be long-term. Multidisciplinarity, in order to get all the know-how needed to come for breakthrough solutions. An innovation ecosystem in which you can translate the findings, the scientific findings, into products that you can export and actually utilize in society. And in the program, a focus on global impact. Because we're working with water technology, it needs to be applicable worldwide, and it needs to be both societal and commercially relevant what we develop. So coming back to all these points just briefly, to create a high trust environment is, it sounds logic, but it's difficult to do. We have a research program which we have divided into 25 different clusters, and companies can become a member, so to speak, of a cluster, and we have maximum 8 companies per cluster. And in such a cluster, in such a research theme, the companies all have an equal vote. So an SME with 10 people or with 100 people has the same vote as Veolia with somewhat more than our 100 people. And companies like Shell, who are end users, and General Electric are also involved, and they are more in the program so that they can steer the technology development into a direction so that they can fulfill their future needs with regard to water availability as a license to produce. But all these companies are equal, and that is very important if you want to build a system in which SMEs are actively participating, because SMEs, that there's a high innovation capacity there, and in order to liberate that, they need to be able to speak out. And in many cooperation programs, it is very clear that the multinationals, they define the strategy, they pay the most, so they are dominant, and the SMEs feel left out. In our system, everybody pays the same per theme, and it's 28,000 euros per year for at least 4 years, so it's a 110,000 euro commitment when they sign the first contract. And that is the same for everybody. The second thing about high trust is that you need to be clear on what to do with what you develop. So we invest 16 million euros per year, and what comes out is patents basically, and research publications, of course. So in a research cluster that I just talked about, for instance, Blue Energy, we have some 4 PhDs, and what they do is defined by the 8 companies and the 8 blue circles that are connected to the theme. So they cooperate in the definition of the research programs. It's a bit of give and take there. And they also cooperate in the application in practice of the know-how developed. So they have a shared right on IP. And that is very important because you see a lot of cooperation also happening between these companies. But these companies need to trust each other before they, of course, enter into such a team for long-term strategic development. And yeah, if you have this trust in each other, if you're in such a team for a long time, because most companies are in our program from, let's say, 2005, so many companies are already 13, 14 years in our program. And these companies, since they know each other, they trust each other, and more ideas are shared with each other. Also for the universities, by the way, of course, it's very important that also the rules on publication, etc., are very clear. I already mentioned that long-term public and private commitment is very important, and the foundation of everything what we do is basically the commitment of the region, because the region funds the research facilities. And the city of Leeuwarden has called itself capital of water technology, so the total focus of our city, of our region, is on water technology. And that means that the blue line, which is from the region, that is the basis on which we build. So clear choices need to be made. Multidisciplinarity. In water technology, typically on solutions they work from one of the four main areas in science, either from life sciences, technical sciences, and so on. But what you often see is that the solution lies in a combination of multiple sciences. So we have a program with 60 PhDs, 55 professors connected in all these fields. And by letting them work in one laboratory, you get them to really cooperate, because then also they learn to understand each other from their science field, not just from the same language that they speak. I already mentioned the innovation ecosystem. Know-how is great, but you need to apply it. So if you have a center of excellence like WETSUS is, without a valorization center in the region, then the chances are that valorization goes a lot slower. And the other thing is that the region who is investing in the beginning does not profit enough. Focus on global impact. Well, water technology can be applied in many fields. Also, as an example, in the treatment of very salty streams in the oil industry. And you can also use water technology to generate power from the mixing of salt and fresh water, as we do in the Netherlands in a big pilot plant. So for the region, this has led to many new companies that have seen light. Almost 50 companies have started their business in the city of Leeuwarden, a 100,000 people city, so relatively small. A truly new know-how economy has seen light there. Inspired talent. We have a lifelong learning program from vocational education to the doctor degree on water technology, and many talents from all over Europe. Also thanks to the Marie Curie program, now work in our program, and this talent is of course available for the companies who are in our program. And of course many jobs and growth in a know-how economy in a region that has no university, and that is very special. And this is of course the title also on which the regions invest. So I hope to have explained to you briefly what we have done as a European Center of Excellence, how we have become that. Peter de Jong already explained that we wish to cooperate with many regions in Europe. We already do, but we want to expand that. We want to offer our experience. We want to connect to those regions for capacity building, and also to expand our own network. And we also would like to offer to the European Union, and we have delivered the position paper for that, our experience to create centers of excellence in other fields than in water technology, because our experience may be very usable for other fields of attention, for other regions also to set up, so that also for other fields, centers of excellence can see the light, and we would be happy to share all our experience for that. And that concludes my talk. Thank you very much.